Welcome to Imperfect Momming. Our children are constantly looking to us for examples. The term role model doesn't quite cut it here. We are shaping their worldview with every move we make. You see, it's not in the lectures we give or moments where we are actively attempting to teach them. It's in the micro movements we make, the unconscious ways in which we navigate life. We are constantly teaching our children how to show up for themselves, their friends, their future partners, and even their future children. So what can we do to ensure we are raising thoughtful, compassionate, self-aware human beings? We have to become them ourselves. No one is perfect, but we can still all be better, and it starts with self-healing. Let's get to it. Welcome back to Imperfect Momming, and we have a very special guest today. It is Dr. Nerissa Bauer. Welcome to Imperfect Momming.
Oh, I am so excited to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely.
Um, yeah, so I just a little bit about myself for the listeners. So I'm a behavioral pediatrician. I'm based in Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm also an entrepreneur and founder of Let's Talk Kids Health. So I'm really excited to just talk to you because this is the world that I live in. I mean, I'm a mom myself to two kids, one who's a new freshman in high school and one who is a newly sixth grader in middle school. So we had a big transition this year. And then, I teach parenting in my private practice. So this is what I love to talk to families about.
Yeah. And I had never heard of a behavioral pediatrician before I met you.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. I
and I was really excited about it. Like this is a thing, or did you make up this term?
Yeah, well, it is a thing. It is a thing, but yeah, I get that all the time. So the actual term is a developmental behavioral pediatrician. So what that means is I went through the pediatric residency training so that I can learn all about kids and how to care for them and how to distinguish sick from non-sick, normal from abnormal, and just, how to be able to spot those things quickly. But then at the end of that training, which was 3 years, where I did it in San Diego, I also at the time met someone who was really important to my career and became a mentor to me. And that's Dr. Marty Stein. And he primarily saw children who had ADHD, anxiety, school problems, and parenting problems. And at the time that I trained with him, I spent an extra year just seeing patients with him and learning from him. They actually created a board certification process, which means doctors have to go and take tests and show that they're proficient in it. And at the time, Dr. Stein actually sat for this. And, he was close to retiring and he was like, gosh, I'm studying again, for this. But yeah, he was part of that early crew. And it is a recognized field now, developmental behavioral pediatrician. But the kids that I primarily focus on are much more the behavioral diagnoses more than the developmental, although I do see kids with autism, speech delays. It's all part of the bigger picture. I need to understand what's happening before we make diagnoses. But what I love is that it affords me a lot of time with my patients to really unpack what's going on and to understand their story and their experience, which I think we have to know. We can't just like hear a story and label a child after a couple minutes. That would be wrong. And then we miss the opportunity to sort of support the families because it affects everybody, right? So that's why I love what I do.
Yeah, and I think that you had mentioned in our previous conversation that you didn't like the aspect of I meet you for 5 minutes and now I'm giving you a prescription. Like that was one thing that you didn't like about the pediatrician side, right?
Yeah, I mean I have lots of friends who are general pediatricians and they have to see so many different things. And, with COVID and all of that, they're dealing with all of those issues along with asthma, rashes, and ear infections, right?
Hmm.
But a lot of them see patients they just, because it's the way it is, they see so many patients in a day, like 30 to 50 in a day. And that's not a lot of time.
Mm-mm.
But for these types of issues, these the issues that I see and that I love, ADHD, anxiety, depression, and parenting issues, you've got to understand the context of what's happening, and you need more time to understand how it affects everybody. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that was the thing that stood out to me the most about talking to you the first time, was that was something, and I was like, that's really cool that it's difficult. It's a difficult system to be in that we've created for ourselves. There's, probably too many people and not enough doctors.
Hmm.
Just like there's too many children and not enough teachers. And
Yep.
so we get into these situations where we're not getting individualized attention. And because we're raised like this, we also think that the solution to our problem, it can be a general solution.
Hmm.
So we don't take the time to look at like who we are, what our values are, what our, drivers are, and we try to motivate ourselves to do things that aren't important to our soul,
Hmm.
right? Because we're like, well, this mom is being an entrepreneur and she's having a lot of fun in this specific direct sales business. And so I'm going to do that, and I'm going to have as much fun as her, and I'm going to feel fulfilled like she is. And it's like, but are you that person? Like, are you that
Hmm.
mom? Do you have exactly the same priorities and everything? And when I started my direct sales business over 10 years ago, I just needed to make money. And I knew that I could sell anything. I just
Hmm.
had that awareness, or that belief in myself, that I could sell ice to an Eskimo. And whether or not that's true, that's the belief that I had. And so it didn't matter that I was selling skincare from a company I'd never even tried the product from.
Hmm.
Luckily, I fell in love with the product.
Yeah.
But it was like, I I started out because I just wanted to make money. I fell in love with the product. I fell in love with the company, and I was in the company for a long time, but there was a disconnect from who I was becoming.
Mm.
And so I still love the business. I still love the company. I still love the people that are my customers. And I'm fulfilled by this coaching stuff, and so it's just a different thing. So that's me.
Yeah, no, but what you just said is so important because like my journey becoming a doctor and then to where I am now, it wasn't a straight line at all. It was like this curvy path and sometimes took couple steps backwards and then forwards. And what I do now, I don't think I envisioned for myself when I went to medical school, and that's the beauty of life. Sometimes you just have to sort of follow the path and believe in yourself, and sometimes you're like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know what the heck I'm doing, but I need to surround myself with the people who
Yeah.
know and learn." I mean, that's what we're all doing through life is learning more about ourselves and the people we interact with.
And it sounds like you weren't fulfilled as a traditional pediatrician.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, just as a backstory, I really loved kids and I knew I wanted to work with kids, so pediatrics was a no-brainer for me. But as I went through my pediatric training, we see kids, we're supposed to do all these different rotations within pediatrics, so we get a feel for everything. And then I just really just fell in love with the field of development and behavior. What I loved was really having the time to get to know families and do things more preventively. And as a whole, pediatrics in general, we believe in prevention. But I just loved sort of the nuances of getting to get to know a family and really see the growth and the potential in a child, but also what that means for the parent as they're learning the skills they need to not only keep this child alive, but to nurture them and, really kind of understand what their gifts are, you know? So it's been a lot of fun. And then when I got to my first faculty position, I did research for a while. I was doing I was teaching future pediatricians. I loved all that for many, many years, but then I got burned out. And so after 13 years at one institution, I ended up deciding I have to figure out something else for me. At this point in time, it just didn't feel like a good fit. I was burned out. I really was. And now I have a 2-day a week private practice in Indianapolis. And then I also have my blog and I do a Facebook Live show and I have digital courses to help support families. And it just has afforded me so much creativity that I love and I thrive on. And I think all the time as I see families, like, how can I not only help this family in front of me, but because I know that other people are struggling with this, what can I do to help, give this information and
Mm,
deliver it in a meaningful way to other families as well,
yeah.
without burning myself out too
Right.
in the process. So,
And I really think, it sounds like you're doing a lot of different things, like you just
mhm.
mentioned 4 or 5 different things, and you're less burned out, and you're probably working the same amount of hours and
As before.
as
Yeah.
before. And so to me, it proves my theory, that when we're tapping into our creativity and tapping into things that we love and things that are important to us,
hmm
that it's not the number of hours in the day that we work. It's what we're doing and what we're focusing on and the creative outlet as well. Like, I think that all of that's important, like to have a job that you're passionate about and something that allows you to be creative on top of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And certainly what you said was, does it align with our values? Does it align with what we want and then allows us to get that feeling of fulfillment? I
Mm-hmm.
think it's so important. And
Yeah.
it can change over time
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. And like I grew up as a writer. And so for a long time, I felt like the only way that I could express my creativity was through writing.
mm,
And I'm realizing now, pretty much through doing the podcast and being a coach, and I like to cross stitch, and I started bullet journaling for a while, and that was a creative outlet. And so it was like, um it opened my eyes to, it doesn't have to be writing,
yeah.
but some of it needs to be too.
Yeah.
Because that's my love. Like, I went to a coaching conference recently, and one of the questions they asked is, what would you do if you trusted yourself 5% more?
Hmm.
And the first thing out of my mouth, maybe it was the second thing, the first thing was probably, I would have more coaching clients because I was in a coaching seminar. But like, the second thing was, I would have more books published.
Hmm.
So it's like, every time that kind of thing comes up, I'm like, yeah, I need to. And even this morning I said, I need to make time for writing. And my friend, who is also a coach, said, do you need to make time, or do you need, no, I think I said find time. And she goes, do you need to find it, or do you need to make it?
Mm.
Like, we don't create time. Now I'm remembering, trying to figure out which one was which, which I actually said and what she asked me. But essentially it's that I need to prioritize
Yeah.
the time of writing and not prioritize everything else in front of the writing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that really resonates with me. I mean, that idea of, for instance, I mentioned to you that I was doing research for a period of time. I got my master's of public health, and for a long time that was kind of what I did. I would write grants and try to get money to do the research, to do the trials. And then once we finished the trials, which would often be, a couple of years, because, when you have to do that and collect all the data and then analyze the data, then write it up and then publish it. And you don't just publish it in the first journal that you send it to, and you always have to refine it. And I mean, it could be years. And it was so, I mean, I thrived in that for a long time, but then that was also the same thing that burned me out, because I was and I of course I grew thick skin. It wasn't that my idea or what I'm doing was necessarily a bad thing, or it just wasn't the right fit for that journal. But when I left, and now I had this aha moment. I'm like, all my ideas for grants and research, my problem was it was taking so long to get to where it needed to be. But really, it's not the scientific journals that define me, like, and as a person, which grant I got or which publication it was in, which is what in academia they use as kind of yardsticks to measure you by. I just realized those same ideas were born out of the fact that I was seeing patients and seeing families, real families who needed solutions, not just a one-on-one solution, but more of a bigger system solution. And so that's what got me into blogging. I was just like, the people who need this information is not going to pick up a science journal. They're on the internet. They're on, so that's why I sort of took those ideas and I felt okay with it. I was like, you know what? These are ideas that I could be, instead of research, turn it into entrepreneurial endeavors, get it out there faster.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just kind of touched on this a little bit, is that person versus performance connection, that so much of our self-esteem is wrapped up in how good of a student we are and how good, whether our article is being published in a magazine, or, if our parents say that they're proud of us, or, like so much of, like, your parents say, I'm proud of you because you got A's. Instead of, I'm proud of you that you put how much work you put in.
Yeah. Your effort,
right? I'm proud of you because you're a person and I love you because you're my child. Like all of these things, like like if we could, as parents, remember to separate the person from the performance, the difference in our self-esteem would be just astronomical.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, in my parenting workshops that I do, we talk a lot about not praising the end product or not waiting for perfection, but really we want to shape our child's behavior and praise all the little steps along the way. And just like you said, separate the person from the action or the behavior. Even when a child is misbehaving, right? It's going to be really important, first of all, to not just, if you can, not to just react. And I have been trying with my clients to help them see a mind shift that, especially for the kids that I see, they have ADHD, anxiety, there's developmental delays sometimes, that these are brain-based conditions that sometimes your child is definitely not doing this to just get under your skin. But in the moment, it's so hard to remember that because you're tired, you're hungry, you've got to get dinner on the table, right? But really trying to understand that these are things that these behaviors that we're seeing can be a signal that our child is still struggling and they just don't have those skills yet, right?
Yeah.
So if we can remember to meet them where they are, that just makes it so much easier to then be able to kind of react in a different way rather than just kind of frustrated, overwhelmed, upset, and angry all the time.
Yeah, like we take our child's behavior personally too.
Yeah. Yes.
Like their behavior is a reflection on who we are as a mom, as a person, as a whatever. Like, and really they're just learning. They're learning and they learn by testing boundaries, but also they just do things. And then it's our job to, correct a behavior. And, I just remember the first time that my son gave me an attitude, and I didn't respond like, hey, you don't talk to me that way. And it was like, why are you giving me an attitude right now? Like, what? It was genuine curiosity. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't do anything to deserve that tone of voice, and that's not how you normally talk to me. So what's going on? Like, why are you? And it was like an immediate, now every time he'll hear himself now give me an attitude, and he goes, I'm sorry, mom, blah, 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 blah.
Mm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of times now that I'm hearing him say I'm sorry for things that don't need an apology. It's like, I'm trying to think of what it was this morning while we were waiting for the bus to pick him up. And I said something and he said, sorry. And I said, it's not an accusation.
Yeah.
I'm just letting you know, it's a notification. And this is, something that my boyfriend said to me. So I know that I do it too, where it's like, it feels like an accusation when it's not.
I love that. It's not an accusation, but it's a notification.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's bringing that awareness and without judgment. It's just like, hey, yeah, I love that so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's feedback. And that's the thing with, submitting an article and having them send it back to you and getting to revise it. It's feedback. And, the reason that hurts is because we have a person and performance attachment, right? So I am my book, I am my article, and you're not liking every word.
Yes.
Means you don't
so
like
that has right, exactly. Yeah. I remember those first rejections. I was like, oh my gosh, and my mentors was like, it doesn't mean that it's not well written or it's not a good idea. It's just not a good fit. Or maybe they just got another article that's just like that. They don't need another one. So I was like, oh, it's kind of like, those thoughts that we have in our mind when we are in a situation and we just tear ourselves apart sometimes with all the shoulds and all the the thoughts that play in our heads. I remember the first time my son had a big tantrum in Target. and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is really testing my parenting skills here. Here I am. I teach parenting to other people. I wonder if there's anybody around that's like seeing me right now. And they're going to be like, why should we listen to her?
Yeah.
But it's like all those thoughts that go in your mind, not just the fact that you're here. Gosh, I mean, when things go awry in public, that just adds another layer of complexity, right? To your thought process, like, oh my gosh, people are going to be judging me. People are going to think I'm a bad mom or I can't handle my kids, right? Whew. But we've all been there, and luckily, the message is that there is not one wrong or right way to parent. I think if you parent from the heart and you are with the goal of connecting and communicating with your child and collaboration as they get older, for sure, and teaching them those skills. I mean, that's what we want.
Right. And at one point, so I've always asked my son his input on stuff. Like, it started out with clothing because I was curious, like, what his favorite color was. And so like for a 2-year-old, they don't know what their favorite color is, but they know if they like this shirt or this shirt better, right? So I just started with that, and then it just, there was more and more of that happening as he grew up. And my boyfriend said that, asking them questions and making them make decisions too young is actually really stressful. And so I didn't stop because it is a habit, and it doesn't seem to be stressing him out. Right. And yesterday when I was recording a podcast, she was actually saying that it was really empowering to let a child make a lot of their decisions. And I was like, I mean, I think if it stressed him out, then I would notice.
Yeah.
And I would have stopped doing it.
Yeah, I think so too. And in all honesty, I think it helps because it not only nurtures their ability to and shows that you value their opinion and they can make a choice. But as kids, if you think about it, they don't really have a lot of choice in a lot of things. Like
Right.
once they hit school, they've got to follow, they got to be in circle time, they got to follow this schedule, they got to do this. They're kind of at the whim of adults. So
Mhm.
really, playtime is their only time to be the boss of what they do. And it can be really hard for kids because they just don't feel like they have a lot of control day to day. However, when you give them that opportunity, and what I love about what you just said is, do you like this shirt or this shirt? I mean, at least it kind of constrains it, because for some kids, too many choices is really
Mm.
overwhelming.
Yeah.
But like it's manageable with just two or three, and I love that. I love that you just kind of naturally have done that through his
Yeah.
life.
I think he's annoyed because I've let him choose what he eats all the time.
Ah.
And
Does
so
that mean what he dictates what you guys eat for dinner too?
no, I was making separate food for him. Like we really didn't have dinner time. It's like you're hungry, you eat now. And that's caused some issues where, we went to my parents' house and they said dinner was at 2. And it's 1:40 because it takes 20 minutes to get there. So we left right on time.
Mhm.
And my son says, I'm hungry. And I said, great, we're gonna eat it too. And he's like, what? Because usually I would go to McDonald's or what, it's
Yeah.
like I have a weird relationship with food where I don't think about it unless I'm hungry or unless he says something. So like I'm trying to train myself to have him eat at a certain time too. It's not working very well so far, but it's on my mind. And he was not happy that I was making him wait the 20 minutes. And he goes, I'm going to be very hangry and I might, do something because I'm hangry. I might give an attitude, or he was warning me or threatening me. I'm not sure which. And I said, that's fine. We're going to eat in 20 minutes.
Yep.
And you have the permission to feel however you feel, and your actions have consequences.
Yeah.
So just remember that when you have an attitude or when you throw a shoe or whatever, like it's fine. You can feel how you feel. That's great. And your actions will have consequences 100% of the time. And I think that's better than sit down, shut up.
Yeah.
It's just, don't you dare give me an attitude. How, it's just like, it's not, that doesn't teach him anything except to be under the thumb of an adult.
Yeah. You know what? I mean, and one other thing I want to point out about that story that really stuck out was that he himself was able to verbalize, well, I'm going to feel this way, or, and that's so important to help your child be able to voice their emotion or their feelings, whether they be good or negative ones. I mean, we all experience the whole rainbow of emotions. That's what makes us human. And the fact that your son is able to say, this is how I'm going to feel, mom, I mean, and he can communicate that with you rather than showing you.
Right.
Like he's getting to know himself, right?
Yeah.
That's really great.
It makes me really happy because I've struggled with identifying the emotions that I feel because I shoved them down for so long that it's like I don't even know that I'm feeling an emotion until I've started, until I have a reaction, like eating something to avoid the feeling that I'm not feeling. It's so crazy to slow down that process of there's an action, there's a thought that creates the feeling that produces a reaction, and those two missing steps, it's like the thing happens, the reaction happens. So really just slowing down that process, in me learning from myself, he's seeing it and doing it too.
That's right. You're modeling it. It's very powerful. I mean, modeling is one of the principles that we teach in our parenting classes. And, sometimes it can be really daunting for parents. You're like, what do you mean? I'm on then 24/7. I'm like, yes. And it's, and they're going to learn not just what you say or how you say it, but they're constantly listening. Even though you don't think they are, they're picking up on everything, your cues, your nonverbals. And yes, they're going to pick up the good and the not so good and everything in between. But the good thing is you can use it as an opportunity to show them that nobody's perfect
Right.
and that you can learn from mistakes. I mean, we all make mistakes.
Yeah.
And it's just like how you approach it, how you communicate. I mean, it makes it much more accessible
Mm-hmm.
to them.
And I think that you put your words to the opening of my podcast episodes. It's in the micro movements that we make, that they're not listening to our lectures. They are, but it's not like, you know, those people that say, I opened my mouth and my mom came out.
I've not heard that.
You haven't?
No. Is this like, well, say that again?
I opened my mouth and my mom came out.
Oh, it's kind of like I'm acting like my mom.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I get it.
it. Yeah. And it's like, you don't realize, like, and that's said by people that don't want to be like their mom.
Yes.
But they've learned those behaviors from watching. You know, nobody's been sat down and said, okay, this is how you hate yourself. This is how you overwork. Mm-hmm. This is how you stress eat. Nobody does that.
Yeah.
They watch their parents do it, or they watch a person who's important to them modeling that behavior, and we grow up wanting to be like these people that we look up to. Mm-hmm. Parents, teachers, whoever. Mm-hmm. You know, so sorry, I got all excited. I was all sitting up all straight and stuff.
Me too. I was like, what?
Yeah. I got to start paying attention to these things that like get me all excited, because those are content.
Well, luckily you have this recorded.
I have it on recording. Right? Exactly.
So I mean, we're social learning creatures, right? I mean, mm-hmm. This is how we learn, and it's so powerful. We're our kids' first teachers, and you said it right. I think it's not just parents, but it's the people who provide safe, secure, nurturing relationships. That could be a coach, it could be a teacher, it could be a cousin, it could be a counselor. We are, live in relationships, and those relationships can really help make us who we are.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I don't know why what you said teachers, and I just immediately thought of my son's third grade teacher, who he didn't even spend a whole lot of time in the classroom physically with because of COVID. It was mostly distance learning, but they did some in class, but again, 2 days a week instead of 5. But he loves her so much that he wanted to change schools when he found out she was changing schools to teach 4th grade.
Aww.
And it happens to be the school that's closer to our house. And so, that factored in with a couple of other things. We did change him schools. She's not his teacher, but there's something about her that he's drawn to, that he really loves. Yeah. And then I was like, oh, well, I wonder what that is. I want to get to know her. What is it he sees in her? I want to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just that curiosity.
Yeah.
It's
well,
a small world.
Yeah. Well, and I'm glad you had the opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And too bad he didn't get her for a teacher.
I know. I tried really hard. I called the principal. I was like, can we request? And she goes, we don't do requests. And I was like, oh, well, hopefully he hasn't said, anything bad about the current teacher. The only thing he doesn't like is PE. And mostly because it was 105 the first day of school, and they went out and played and did PE at 105. And I was like, is that legal? Luckily luckily it's been like 90 to 95 the last 2 days. So today I had a sweatshirt on when I walked him to the bus. That hasn't happened in many months. But so one thing I totally didn't prepare you for, what advice would you like to give to our listeners, to moms?
Well, there's plenty, but I think the one that's been weighing on my mind is, is kind of what we've been touching on this whole time is, I think as parents, we have the unique gift of raising our kids to become, the gifts they are and seeing them grow. But, while we're doing it, I think two things. One is that please show self-compassion to yourself, take care of yourself. That is one of the most important things, because we can't give our kids the 120% we want to give them if we're not, refilling our cup and taking care of
Mhm.
ourselves. So that would be number one. And number two, sorry, I'm cheating.
That's
Number
okay.
two,
You're the first one to cheat with two.
Oh, no. But it's related. It's related. Number two is, in the process of being mom and being everything to our children, do not lose sight of yourself as a person. Nurture those gifts, getting back to your writing, getting back to the things that bring you joy. Yes, we love our kids. We want the best for them, but we also need to nurture and find what brings us joy and the creative spark to keep us on, feeling just fulfilled in life. So I think I've wrapped it up,
Right.
brought it
Oh,
full
for sure.
circle.
Yeah. And I think that I could talk about that right there for another 2 hours. I won't, but I could. Because, I remember when I was pregnant, I was put on bed rest. So that
Me
was
too.
nice.
Me too.
And I sat most of the time I was on bed rest, with the exception of when I was working from home, in bed. I was cross stitching.
I was
So
knitting.
yeah, there you go. And I remember thinking I better do as much of this as I can now, because I'm not going to get to do it ever again. I thought ever again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was probably, I don't remember, but it took somewhere between 6 months to a year to pick up, to feel safe enough to
Do that again.
do that,
Mm.
where I didn't feel like my world had to revolve around him.
Mhm.
And I'm glad that I didn't give it up forever. I did give up writing for 12 years, not totally related to him. But when I started getting back into writing, my first concern was, well, when I would write as a kid, I would get so engrossed with what I was doing that I would look up and it was 4 a.m.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so my fear was, what if I forget to pick him up
Oh, no.
from school?
Yes.
Like, forget to pick him up from school, right? And that stopped me. And luckily I had a life coach at the time, and I said that to her, and she goes, could you set a timer, set a reminder? I have well, until now that we're at a school district that's close to us, he can ride the bus. This is the first time since kindergarten through 3rd grade that he's ridden a bus to school, and it's weird. It's weird.
You're like, all of a sudden I have this time.
Right. That was such a huge motivating factor for me. I was like, if he rides the bus, then I could be up with him and I don't have to leave the house. Yes.
Yes. You just made time there, or was it you got time back?
I did. I got back probably 2 hours a day.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Wow. That you could do a lot in 2 hours.
I could do a lot in 2 hours. I could just fill that with writing time.
I hope you do.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. So when I lost my train of thought, but that was a fear. And before the bus was taking him to school, I had reminders that it's time to leave.
Yeah.
And it's really simple. It's really easy to fight for our limitations. It's really easy to fight for our limiting beliefs, or, our fears. Like, we'll fight for those things. And that's why it's good to have a coach to, like, ask a simple question like, could you set a timer? It's not as complicated as we love to make it.
Yeah. But you know, on the flip side of that, I love that. That means you were like hyper focused and in the zone.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that too.
When when it was school time and we were in distance learning, I had 4 timers set for 1 minute before Zoom started, because it would be like 8:30, 10:45, 11:45, and no, 10:15, 11:45, and then 2.
Mm-hmm.
And they would do some work, and then they would work independently, and then they would jump back on. And I have no idea what time it is most of the day. And this was on my very first episode. I said the exact same thing. And my son was in the background. He goes, "It's 10:15." And
you're like, thanks.
It's like, great. Yeah. So it's like, I needed those reminders, because there was no way I was going to be able to, I'm always super into what I'm doing,
Mm-hmm.
unless Facebook's up, and then I'm not so much, or my phone's on. But when there's a person on the other end of what I'm doing, I'm super focused on what I'm doing,
Yep.
So, and then I know that you're very well read. Is there a book that you want to recommend that was transformational for you?
Well, I have a lot of books, and I have some right here because I run a free parenting book club on my Facebook page. And actually, I guess I'll share this one. I mean, I have lots that I love. No, I'm going to step back. Actually, the one that I really, really love is this one here, How to Talk So Kids Will Listen, and How to Listen So Kids Will Talk. That's a parenting book, just because it's a classic. It was published for the first time in the 60s, but it just teaches you these communication techniques that you can use with any child at any age, and it'll grow with you, because again, like at the heart of what we do as a parent is how we communicate with them, and how we model, and how we connect with them. And while they're still learning about their emotions, and they're regulating all these things and going through the ups and downs of life, and hopefully we're also able to be the calm in the storm. Sometimes we are, sometimes we aren't. But what I love about it is that it gets back to just that connection piece. So I think that has been such a wonderful book for myself, for the families that I see. And it's a must read in anybody's parenting library. So
sounds like it. So where can they find you?
Well, so my website is Let's Talk Kids Health. It's all one word, and that's .org. And I also have a YouTube channel, Instagram, and Facebook under Let's Talk Kids Health. YouTube is under Nerissa Bauer, MD. And I would love to hear from anybody who's listened to this episode. Give us your thoughts and interact with me on Facebook or social media. And like I said, I do Facebook Lives all the time. So I love interacting and reaching the people who want to hear this. Because again, that's why I named my blog Let's Talk Kids Health, because I believe we should all talk about this. Yeah. It's so important. We really do. So
yeah, I don't think that I knew about Let's Talk Kids Health when we talked the first time. So when you said that, I was like, "Ooh, that sounds cool! Like, that's really cool."
Well, it's a play on words, because in my parenting group, I teach about the Let's command, especially if you use the Let's command and you have a preschool toddler age kid. You're like, "Hey, let's pick up the toys," and then you actually don't intend to do that, but then the kid's like, "Oh, okay, come on, mommy, let's do it." Like they're very literal. It's like, let's do it together. And so, but when I named my blog, it was a pun on words, because I really wanted it to be a space for families, for for educators, for professionals to all talk about behavioral health and wellness. So
when we say let's pick up our toys, is that to get them to do it on their own, or to get us to do it with them?
Yeah. So if you intend to do it with them, it's okay to say let's, because that means you and the child. But if you say let's pick up the toys, and then you just stay seated and they're like, "Okay, mommy, why aren't you getting up?" Right?
I was gonna say that never worked for my son. I was like, "Okay, let's pick up your toys. Okay, mom, you help." I'm like, "No, that." Oh, okay.
Yeah, that. It's just those little tweaks with how we say things, right? It seems so simple, and you're like, "Oh, darn, like question commands, chain command, all these things. So
Mhm.
anyway, yeah, you can find me there. And a lot of my focus is ADHD, anxiety, parenting issues. And I love all that. And, if anybody ever visits and they're like, hey, I want you to do something about this, let me know. So
Yeah. Very cool. And you are host a book club, and you're going to do my book soon.
yes,
I'm
yes.
super excited about it.
And I just got the copy. So I'm going to be reading this and then we're going to be talking about when we're going to set this up, because what happens is I will, publicize this is the book we're reading for the month. And then usually what that means is I'll tell everybody the book title so they can go to their local library or go to Amazon or bookstore, get a copy. And obviously I'll need your links to where you want people to go. And then we read it for the month. And usually what that means is in my Facebook group, I'll post something there every day, every other day with me and my team, just to get you to reflect on what you're reading and just to make sure that you're moving through the book. And then towards the end of the month, I work with each author to invite them to do a discussion. And then we just have a talk like this, and then people can ask questions, comments. So it's always a lot of fun. We just did one for today's for the book for this month earlier today. So that was,
Very
I
cool.
think it's so fun for the readers to meet the author. So yeah, so I'm excited.
Very cool. I'm excited too. All right. So, well, thank you so much for coming and pouring into our listeners and just for everything that you're doing, because I think that you're doing great work, and I have a soft spot in my heart for people that are helping children and moms and live better lives. And
Oh,
yeah,
well, thank you. I had such a fun time talking with you today. And again, thanks for inviting me on.
absolutely. And for our listeners, we will have another episode next week. And until then, keep on healing.
Thank you for tuning in to Imperfect Momming. It's time for us to step up and realize that our power is not in trying to shape our children. Our power lies in shaping ourselves into the people we want our children to model themselves after. Don't just do it for your kids. Do it for yourself. When you become a more self-aware, compassionate, and confident person, you and everyone around you benefit. For more information about me and my work, visit AlysiaLyons.com. That's AlysiaLyons.com. See you next time.